Medieval parties weren't polite tea gatherings with gentle conversation. They were wild, chaotic explosions of human energy that lasted for days. Picture entire villages abandoning all work, nobles and peasants dancing together in muddy streets, and religious festivals turning into carnival-like celebrations where normal rules simply disappeared. People drank ale for breakfast, wore their clothes inside out for luck, and considered it perfectly normal to crown a fool as king for the day. During the Feast of Fools in January, priests would wear women's clothing while conducting mock services. At harvest festivals, young men would carry girls on their shoulders through grain fields while everyone sang drinking songs. During May Day celebrations, entire communities would stay awake for 3 straight days, decorating everything in sight with flowers, ribbons, and greenery until their villages looked like fairy tale kingdoms. Today, our wildest parties pale in comparison to medieval celebration chaos. If you're enjoying this journey back in time, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Are you in a quiet room, outside under the stars, or somewhere else entirely? I love hearing how these historical adventures fit into your day, and your stories help build our community of time travelers who understand that the past holds lessons for living fully in the present. Find a comfortable position, maybe dim the lights if you can. Let the sounds around you fade into the background. We're about to step into a world where celebration meant survival, where joy was grabbed with both hands because tomorrow might bring plague, war, or famine. In medieval times, when life was hard and often short, people knew how to celebrate with an intensity that modern times have forgotten. You're about to experience 3 days of medieval partying that will change how you think about human celebration forever. You wake to the sound of church bells ringing in patterns you've never heard before. Instead of the usual single bell calling people to morning prayers, 3 bells ring together in a wild, joyful chaos that makes your heart beat faster. The bronze voices sing out across the village, announcing that ordinary time has ended and festival time has begun. Sunlight streams through the gaps in your wooden shutters, but something feels different about this morning. The air carries sounds that don't belong to an ordinary day. You swing your legs over the edge of your straw mattress and immediately feel the excitement vibrating through the floorboards. Your small cottage seems to tremble with anticipation, as if the wooden beams themselves understand that something extraordinary is about to happen. Footsteps pound on the wooden boards above your head, and voices call out in laughter rather than the usual morning grumbles. Your elderly neighbor Henrik, who typically greets each dawn with complaints about his aching joints, can be heard singing what sounds like a drinking song at the top of his lungs. Your stomach rumbles with hunger, but the smell drifting through your window isn't the typical bread baking. Instead, you catch the rich scent of meat roasting and spices that only appear on special occasions. The aroma speaks of precious cinnamon brought from distant lands, of cloves worth more than a week's wages, and of nutmeg so rare that most people taste it only once or twice in their entire lives. These are the smells of celebration, of abundance temporarily released from careful hoarding. The woolen blanket falls away as you stand, and you realize you can hear music. Not the solemn hymns that usually drift from the church, but fiddles and drums playing fast, happy tunes that make your feet want to move even before you're fully awake. Someone outside your window shouts something about the feast beginning, their voice bright with the kind of excitement usually reserved for children on holy days. Suddenly you remember what day this is. The harvest festival has arrived, and for the next 3 days, your entire world will transform into something magical. You pull on your best tunic, the one saved for holy days and special occasions. The fabric feels softer than your daily work clothes, dyed a deep brown that cost your family extra coins months ago. The dye came from walnut hulls gathered in autumn and carefully processed by the village dyer, who guarded his techniques like precious secrets. Your fingers fumble with the ties because the excitement is spreading through your body like warmth from a fire. Today, the normal rules don't apply. Today, even the poorest villagers will eat meat and dance until their feet ache. Through your window, you see your neighbor Willem stumbling out of his door wearing his wife's apron and a crown made of turnip leaves. The sight is so unexpected that you laugh out loud, pressing your face against the wooden shutters to see better. His wife Margaret follows, dressed in his work clothes and carrying a wooden sword like a conquering knight. The sword is actually a carved spoon from their kitchen, but Margaret waves it with such authority that it might as well be forged steel. They're both laughing so hard they can barely walk straight, and you realize the festival has already begun its magic. The Feast of Fools tradition allows everyone to trade places during festival time, and watching serious Willem pretend to cook breakfast while Margaret pretends to defend the village fills you with giggles that bubble up from somewhere deep in your chest. Willem attempts to crack eggs while wearing Margaret's long skirts, and the eggs end up mostly on the ground while Margaret provides military commentary on his technique. The absurdity of it all makes your morning feel lighter, as if someone has lifted a weight you didn't know you were carrying. You splash cold water on your face from the wooden basin by your bed, and the shock of it makes you gasp and feel fully awake for the first time in weeks. The water is so cold it makes your teeth ache, but it also makes you feel alive and ready for whatever wonders the festival might bring. Your reflection in the water shows a face bright with anticipation, eyes wider than usual, and a smile that seems to have appeared without conscious effort. You open your door and step into a world gone wonderfully mad. The usually quiet village street buzzes with activity as neighbors pour out of their homes in costumes, disguises, and inside-out clothing. The tradition of wearing clothes backwards or inside out during festival time is meant to bring good luck, but it also creates a visual reminder that normal rules have been suspended. People walk differently when their clothes are on backwards, move more carefully, laugh more readily at their own awkwardness. Old Henrik, who normally scowls at children and complains about noise, wears a wreath of oak leaves and dances with a group of young girls who giggle and spin around him. The oak leaves are still green despite the late season, carefully preserved for this moment, and they rustle with each movement of his gray head. The girls treat him like a maypole, weaving colored ribbons around his arms and shoulders until he looks like a living celebration. His weathered face shows an expression of pure joy that you've never seen before, as if the festival has awakened a part of him that sleeps during ordinary times. The baker's wife, usually so stern about proper behavior that children cross the street to avoid her lectures, has painted red circles on her cheeks and sings at the top of her lungs while juggling 3 small loaves of bread. The bread flies through the air in perfect arcs, and she catches each loaf with theatrical flair while never missing a note of her song. The song is about a baker who fell in love with a wheat field, and her voice carries clearly across the village square, drawing smiles from everyone who hears it. Your feet carry you toward the village center without conscious thought, pulled by the magnetic energy of celebration. Each step brings new sights and sounds that fill you with wonder. A group of children has decorated themselves with flowers and leaves, transforming into woodland creatures who dance between the adults with natural grace. Their costumes are simple but effective. Rabbit ears made from cloth, fox tails attached to their belts, and flower crowns that make them look like fairy tale characters come to life. The music grows louder with each step, and you can see the source now. 3 musicians stand on wooden boxes in the main square, playing fiddles and a small drum with such enthusiasm that sweat already beads on their foreheads despite the cool morning air. The fiddles sing together in harmony, weaving melodies that seem to pull music from the very air, while the drum provides a heartbeat that matches the excitement building in your chest. Around them, people of all ages dance in a loose circle, holding hands and stepping in patterns that seem to change every few moments. The dancing looks chaotic at first glance, but as you watch, you begin to see the rhythm underneath the apparent madness. Step to the right, hop on both feet, spin your partner, then switch directions. The steps are simple enough that anyone can learn quickly, but complex enough to require attention and create opportunities for laughter when someone turns the wrong way. When someone makes a mistake, everyone laughs and keeps moving. There's no shame in stumbling, no judgment for being clumsy. The only rule seems to be joy, and you feel your own feet beginning to tap in time with the music. A hand grabs your arm, and you turn to see Martha, the miller's daughter, grinning at you with flowers woven through her braided hair. She wears her festival dress, bright red with yellow ribbons that flutter with each movement, and her face glows with excitement that makes her look younger than her 20 years. The red fabric is wool dyed with madder root, expensive and precious, saved all year for this moment. The yellow ribbons are silk, probably traded from a traveling merchant for several pounds of flour, and they catch the morning light like captured sunshine. Without asking permission, she pulls you into the dancing circle, and suddenly you're spinning and hopping with the rest of the village. Your heart pounds with exhilaration rather than fear as unfamiliar hands grasp yours and guide you through steps you've never learned, but somehow understand instinctively. The other dancers welcome you with smiles and encouraging nods, making space in their circle as naturally as water flows around a stone. The ground beneath your feet feels solid and reassuring, even as your body moves in ways it never does during regular work days. Your hands, usually rough from farm labor, feel light as they grasp your neighbor's fingers. The calluses and dirt under your fingernails seem insignificant compared to the warmth of human connection flowing through linked hands. The music wraps around you like a warm cloak, and for the first time in months, you forget about the harvest worries, the winter preparations, and the 100 small anxieties that usually fill your mind. As the song ends and everyone catches their breath, you realize this is only the beginning. The sun has barely finished rising, and already your quiet village has transformed into a place of magic and wonder. Your stomach growls again, reminding you that even in the midst of celebration, the body needs food. But as you look around at the glowing faces of your neighbors, faces bright with shared joy and anticipation, you know that whatever you eat today will taste better than any meal you've ever had. The morning air carries the promise of extraordinary things to come, and you feel ready for whatever adventures the next 3 days might bring. Your ordinary life has been set aside like a cloak hung on a peg, waiting patiently for your return. But for now, you belong entirely to the festival and its ancient magic of transformation. The village hall has transformed overnight into something that seems pulled from a dream of abundance. Long wooden tables stretch from one end of the building to the other, their surfaces polished until they gleam in the light of dozens of candles. The tables are covered with more food than you've seen in one place during your entire life, arranged with care that makes even simple dishes look like treasures. Roasted pigs gleam with crispy skin, their mouths stuffed with apples that make them look like they're smiling in eternal contentment. The pigs were slaughtered yesterday in a ceremony that thanked them for their sacrifice, and their meat represents months of careful feeding and preparation. Wheels of cheese sit like golden suns next to platters of honey cakes that glisten with sweetness. The cheese has been aging in cool cellars since spring, developing the sharp, complex flavors that make it worthy of festival celebration. Some wheels are as large as cart wheels, requiring two strong men to lift them, while others are small and dense, packed with herbs that perfume the air around them. The honey cakes are works of art, shaped like animals and flowers, decorated with nuts and dried fruits that create patterns too beautiful to eat. Barrels of ale line the walls like soldiers ready for battle, each one marked with symbols that indicate its strength and flavor. Some barrels contain the mild ale that people drink daily, but others hold special brews that have been fermenting since the last festival. These precious barrels contain ale so rich and potent that a single cup can make someone's head spin with pleasure. The air in the hall thrums with conversations, laughter, and the sounds of people eating with pure joy, unrestrained by the careful rationing that governs ordinary meals. You find a space on one of the long benches, squeezing between Goodwife and young Thomas the shepherd. The wooden bench is worn smooth by generations of villagers who have sat in the same spot during countless celebrations, and you can almost feel the presence of all those who came before. Everyone sits wherever they want, regardless of their usual social standing, and the mixing creates conversations and connections that would never happen during ordinary times. The lord of the manor sits at the same table as his stable boys, sharing jokes and passing dishes back and forth without ceremony. You watch in amazement as Lord Geoffrey actually listens to a story told by Peter the stable boy, nodding and laughing at appropriate moments as if Peter's words carry the same weight as those spoken by other nobles. Today, hunger and happiness make everyone equal, and the sight fills your chest with warmth that has nothing to do with the food or ale. A wooden trencher appears in front of you, placed there by someone whose identity you don't catch in the bustle of serving. The trencher itself is carved from oak, polished smooth and darkened with age, passed down through generations of your family for use during special occasions. It's piled high with more food than you typically see in a week, arranged with surprising artistry considering the chaos of the serving process. Thick slices of roasted pork glisten with fat, and herbs you can't identify, but smell like heaven itself has descended into your village hall. The meat has been basted with a mixture of ale, honey, and wild herbs gathered from the forest, creating a glaze that catches the candlelight and makes your mouth water just from looking at it. Chunks of dark bread, still warm from the oven, sit next to the meat like loyal companions. The bread is made from the finest flour, mixed with eggs and butter that are usually saved for the Lord's table, creating a texture so rich and tender it seems to melt on your tongue. A wedge of yellow cheese completes the savory portion of your feast. The cheese is aged until it's sharp enough to make your mouth tingle, with a complexity of flavor that unfolds slowly as you chew. It's the kind of cheese that tells the story of the cows that made it, the pastures they grazed in, the hands that milked them, and the skill of the cheesemaker who transformed simple milk into this golden treasure. A handful of roasted nuts and dried fruits adds sweetness and texture to your plate. The nuts have been roasted with honey and salt until their shells crack easily and their meat inside is perfectly tender. The dried fruits are precious imports that arrived with traveling merchants. Figs from distant Mediterranean groves, dates from desert oases, and raisins so sweet they taste like concentrated sunshine. Your first bite of pork makes you close your eyes in pleasure, and you understand why people save their best ingredients for festival time. The meat is tender and juicy, seasoned with sage and rosemary that grow wild in the hills around your village, but are used sparingly during ordinary times. The fat melts on your tongue, rich and satisfying in a way that makes your whole body feel grateful for this moment of abundance. This isn't the thin soup or dry bread that usually fills your belly. This is food fit for celebrations, for marking the successful end of harvest season, for for reminding everyone that life can be abundant and good. The ale flows as freely as water from a spring, and your wooden cup never seems to empty. Neighbors constantly refill it from pitchers that circulate the tables like friendly spirits, ensuring that no one's cup stays empty for more than a moment. The ale is thick and nutty, stronger than the watered-down version you usually have with meals, and it's been brewed specifically for the festival using recipes that are closely guarded secrets passed down through generations of alewives. The drink warms your throat and makes everything around you seem brighter and more interesting. Colors appear more vivid, laughter sounds more musical, and even the simple act of chewing becomes a pleasure worth savoring. Conversations become funnier, friends seem dearer, and the barriers that usually separate people during ordinary times seem to dissolve like morning mist touched by sunlight. Thomas the shepherd leans over to tell you about the time he accidentally dyed all his sheep pink by leading them through a field of madder root. His story starts simple enough, but with each sip of ale, it grows more elaborate and fantastic. Soon the sheep in his tale are not just pink but purple, dancing on their hind legs and singing hymns in perfect harmony. According to Thomas, the local priest declared it a miracle and tried to canonize the lead-ewe as a saint before discovering the true cause of their transformation. You laugh until your sides ache, partly because the story is absurd and partly because Thomas tells it with such sincere conviction that you almost believe every word. The joy around you is infectious as a summer cold, spreading from person to person through shared laughter and the warm buzz of good ale. Your own stories become funnier in the telling, your words more clever, your observations more keen. Good wife and starts a song about a miller who ground grain so fine it turned into gold dust, and soon everyone within hearing joins in. Her voice is rough from years of calling to her chickens and arguing with her husband, but in the warm, ale-soaked atmosphere of the hall, it sounds as beautiful as any court musician. The song tells of a miller so skilled that kings traveled from distant lands to see his work, bringing bags of grain and hoping to return with bags of gold. Others join the singing, some remembering the traditional words, others improvising verses that make everyone laugh, and a few just humming the melody or clapping their hands in rhythm. The song isn't perfect by any musical standard, but it's real and joyful and alive in a way that makes formal performances seem pale by comparison. Music created by a community for its own pleasure has a warmth that no professional entertainment can match. A commotion near the main door draws your attention away from the singing. Father Benedict, the village priest, enters the hall wearing a jester's cap with tiny brass bells that jingle with each step he takes. The sound is musical and playful, completely at odds with his usual serious demeanor. His typical stern expression has been replaced by a wide grin that transforms his entire face, making him look years younger and infinitely more approachable. Instead of his ceremonial cross, he carries a staff topped with a carved turnip painted to look like a grinning face. The turnip head has been given bulging eyes and a wide smile that somehow manages to look both holy and ridiculous at the same time. During the Feast of Fools, even religious authority gets turned upside down, and seeing the man who delivers serious sermons about sin and redemption now dancing and making jokes fills you with delighted surprise. The priest approaches the head table with exaggerated ceremony, each step carefully timed to make his bells chime in rhythm. He begins a mock sermon about the virtues of ale and the spiritual importance of dancing until your feet hurt. His words are a playful parody of his usual Sunday speeches, delivered with the same formal cadence and dramatic gestures he uses for genuine religious instruction. He speaks of Saint Barley, patron saint of brewers and blessed virgin hops, who watches over those who seek comfort in fermented beverages. His sermon includes biblical quotations that have been cleverly altered to promote celebration rather than restraint. Be fruitful and multiply your joy, and consider the lilies of the field, how they dance in the wind. The crowd roars with appreciation at each perfectly delivered line. Father Benedict blesses the barrels of drink with exaggerated ceremony, making the sign of the cross with a chicken leg instead of his hand. He declares that today, gluttony is a virtue and merriment is a religious duty, and that anyone who fails to laugh heartily will be guilty of the sin of excessive sobriety. The mock blessing ceremony concludes with him taking a long drink from a cup of ale and pronouncing it officially sanctified for the festival. Your trencher empties and fills again without you noticing who keeps serving you, and you realize that the act of serving has become part of the celebration itself. People move constantly around the tables, ladling food, pouring drinks, and sharing choice portions with their neighbors. The serving is done with such good humor and generosity that receiving food feels like receiving a gift rather than simple necessity. The food becomes secondary to the atmosphere, the sense of being part of something larger than yourself. You're not just eating, you're participating in an ancient ritual of community celebration, a tradition that connects you to countless generations who have gathered to mark the seasons turning with feasting and joy. The knowledge fills you with a deep contentment that has nothing to do with the quantity of food in your belly. As the afternoon light begins to slant through the hall's windows, casting long golden rectangles across the crowded tables, you realize you've been eating and drinking and laughing for hours without thinking about anything else. Time has passed without your notice, measured only by the rhythm of conversation and the gradual emptying of serving dishes. Your usual worries about winter preparations, about whether the harvest will last, about all the small fears that normally crowd your mind, have completely disappeared. In their place is a warm, golden feeling of belonging and abundance that you want to capture and keep forever. It's the feeling of being exactly where you're supposed to be, surrounded by people who care about you, sharing in the simple pleasure of being alive and well-fed and happy. The sensation is so perfect that you understand why people count days and save resources all year for these moments of celebration. The hall begins to empty as people drift outside to continue the celebration in the village square, but the leaving is gradual and reluctant. No one wants to break the spell of the feast hall, and conversations continue in doorways and on the steps as people slowly transition from the intimate warmth inside to the broader celebration waiting outdoors. Your legs feel unsteady when you stand, but it's a pleasant unsteadiness, like the feeling after spinning in circles as a child. The world seems slightly soft around the edges, colors more vivid than usual, sounds more musical than everyday noise. You pat your full belly with satisfaction and follow the crowd toward the door, ready for whatever wonders the festival will bring next, carrying within you the warmth and contentment of the feast like a secret treasure. The village square glows with the light from dozens of torches that have been stuck into the ground at irregular intervals, creating pools of dancing illumination connected by mysterious shadows. The flames flicker and dance in the evening breeze, casting moving shadows that make everything look alive and magical, as if the very buildings are swaying in rhythm with some unheard music. Each torch has been soaked in different oils and resins, so the air carries a complex perfume of pine, lavender, and mysterious scents that speak of distant lands and ancient traditions. Musicians have multiplied since morning, and now a full band plays near the old oak tree that has stood in the village center for longer than anyone can remember. The oak's massive trunk serves as both backdrop and resonating chamber for the music, its ancient bark seeming to absorb the melodies and release them back into the night air with enhanced richness. Fiddles, drums, pipes, and even a lute create music that seems to rise from the earth itself, wild and primal and impossible to resist. The lute is a rare instrument in your village, probably borrowed from a traveling minstrel or a wealthy household, and its silvery voice adds sophistication to the rustic energy of the other instruments. The player's fingers dance across the strings with practiced skill, creating melodies that weave in and out of the fiddle harmonies like golden thread through rough cloth. The combination creates music that speaks to both the refined and primitive parts of the human spirit. The ale continues to flow from seemingly endless supplies, carried by young men who have been appointed as cupbearers for the festival. They weave through the crowd with large pitchers, ensuring that no one's vessel stays empty for long, moving with the practiced efficiency of people who understand that their job is crucial to maintaining the celebration's momentum. The ale has changed since morning, shifting from the thick breakfast ale to something lighter and more refreshing, mixed with herbs that make it taste like summer meadows captured in liquid form. The herbed ale has been infused with mint, chamomile, and other plants gathered from the village's herb gardens, creating a drink that refreshes rather than overwhelms, that enhances the dancing rather than making it impossible. Your head feels pleasantly fuzzy, but your feet still know how to find the beat, and your body still responds accurately to the music's rhythmic demands. A group of older men have started a competition involving throwing wooden rings onto pegs stuck in the ground. But their aim grows progressively worse as the evening advances and their ale consumption increases. Their laughter grows louder with each missed throw, and soon the competition becomes more about creating creative excuses for missing the target than about actual accuracy. The creative storytelling becomes more entertaining than successful throws would have been. You pause in your dancing to watch as Henrik claims his ring was blown off course by a fairy who objected to the color of his tunic. Gustav insists that the peg moved just as he threw his ring, probably because it was frightened by his fearsome throwing technique. Their ridiculous explanations earn bigger cheers from the watching crowd than any successful throw could have generated, and you realize that the competition has transformed into impromptu storytelling that showcases imagination rather than physical skill. As the moon rises higher, casting silver light that mingles with the golden glow of the torches, someone brings out masks carved from wood and painted in bright colors. There are animal faces with exaggerated features, demon faces with theatrical scowls, and faces of imaginary creatures with too many eyes or impossibly long noses. The masks are works of art created specifically for the festival, painted with pigments that glow in torchlight and carved with expressions that range from comical to mysterious. People grab masks randomly without looking, adding an element of chance to the transformation, and suddenly the celebration takes on an otherworldly quality that transcends ordinary human interaction. You dance with strangers whose identities are hidden behind grinning fox faces and snarling wolf heads, adding mystery and magic to the already incredible evening. The masks liberate people from their everyday personalities, allowing them to become whoever they want to be for these precious hours of celebration. Your own mask, when you finally claim one from the dwindling pile, is painted to look like the sun with golden rays streaming in all directions. The wooden surface feels smooth against your face, worn by countless previous wearers during past festivals, and the eye holes give you a new perspective on the celebration around you. Through the mask, the world looks slightly different, more magical and less constrained by ordinary rules. The disguise offers freedom from your everyday self, permission to be someone new and more adventurous than the person who works hard and worries about practical things during normal times. Behind the sun mask, you feel bolder, more willing to attempt dance steps you wouldn't try with your regular face showing, more inclined to join in songs even though you're not sure of all the words. The night air carries the complex scent of celebration, torch smoke mixing with roasted meat, ale, and human sweat, flowers wilting in people's hair, and the indefinable smell of joy itself. Your clothes stick to your body with perspiration from dancing, but the sensation feels good rather than uncomfortable, evidence of participation rather than mere observation. Every part of you participates in the festivities, from your aching feet to your laughing throat to your hands that automatically clap in rhythm with whatever music is playing. This is celebration with your whole being, the kind of joy that involves every sense and emotion, that leaves no part of yourself uninvolved in the experience. Your eyes feast on the torchlit faces and swirling costumes. Your ears drink in the music and laughter. Your body moves in harmony with the rhythms, and your heart expands to hold all the happiness that surrounds you. As midnight approaches, you realize this is only the first day of 3, and already you feel changed by the experience. Your understanding of your neighbors has deepened, your appreciation for community has grown, and your capacity for joy has expanded beyond what you thought possible. Your body feels pleasantly exhausted, your mind fuzzy with ale and happiness, but the festival energy shows no signs of diminishing. If anything, the celebration seems to be gaining momentum, building towards something even more magnificent tomorrow. The knowledge that 2 more days of wonder await fills you with anticipation that makes your tiredness irrelevant. With that thought warming you like a second hearth fire, you dance on into the night, surrounded by masked strangers who are also your closest neighbors, moving to ancient rhythms under a star-filled sky that seems to approve of human happiness. You wake on the second morning to discover that your village has sprouted a royal court overnight, complete with all the ceremony and pageantry that such an important institution requires. In the center of the square, someone has constructed a throne that would make any king proud, built from stacked hay bales and covered with the Lord's finest tapestries. The tapestries tell stories of hunting scenes and mythical beasts, their rich colors brilliant in the morning sunlight, and they've been arranged with surprising skill to create a seat that looks genuinely majestic despite its humble foundation. The throne itself is draped in purple cloth that ripples in the morning breeze, and a canopy made from colorful banners flutters overhead like royal standards announcing the presence of monarchy. The purple fabric is genuine, probably borrowed from the church's altar cloths, and its deep color speaks of authority and divine right. The banners include symbols and colors from various village families, creating a coat of arms that represents the entire community rather than any single noble house. But the person sitting on this makeshift throne isn't your usual lord or any visiting nobleman. Young Peter, the village fool who normally cleans stables and runs errands for anyone willing to pay him a few coins, now wears a crown made of twisted branches and sits with exaggerated dignity on the royal seat. The crown is woven from oak and ash branches, decorated with bright ribbons and small brass bells that chime softly when he moves his head. His usual simple clothes have been replaced with an elaborate costume stitched together from scraps of fine fabric donated by every household in the village. A cape that drags on the ground flows from his shoulders, made from pieces of wool, linen, and silk in colors that should clash, but somehow work together in the magical atmosphere of festival time. The cape tells the story of the entire village through its patches. Blue wool from the dyer's workshop, red linen from the weaver's best cloth, yellow silk that probably came from a merchant's sample, all sewn together with careful stitches that transform scraps into royal regalia. Peter holds a scepter carved from a broomstick and topped with a turnip that has been painted gold and decorated with tiny jewels that sparkle in the sunlight. The turnip scepter is a masterpiece of folk art, carved with intricate patterns and painted with enough skill to make it look genuinely precious from a distance. Up close, you can see that the jewels are actually colored glass and polished stones, but the effect is magnificent nonetheless. The sight of Peter transformed from village fool to temporary king makes you grin despite the pounding headache left by yesterday's ale. His face glows with the happiness of someone who has never received this kind of attention and respect, and he carries his royal role with surprising dignity. He sits straight-backed on his throne, nodding gravely to petitioners and speaking in carefully measured tones that parody royal speech while remaining completely sincere. A line of petitioners waits patiently to bring their cases before King Peter's court, and you realize this is another festival tradition that turns normal authority upside down. Instead of real legal disputes about property boundaries or theft accusations, people present absurd complaints designed to make everyone laugh, while also commenting cleverly on real problems that affect village life. Goodwife Martha steps forward with great ceremony, her movements as formal as if she were approaching a real monarch. She has dressed for the occasion in her finest clothes and even borrowed jewelry to make herself look appropriately dignified for her royal audience. She bows deeply, sweeping her arms in an elaborate curtsy that would be appropriate at any noble court, before announcing in a clear voice that she wishes to sue her chickens for laying eggs that are too small. Her complaint is delivered with perfect legal formality, complete with specific accusations and demands for justice. She claims that her chickens have been deliberately producing undersized eggs in violation of their contractual obligations as poultry, and she demands that they be arrested for failure to perform their duties properly. The chickens, she argues, have been eating the same amount of grain while producing inferior products, which constitutes fraud by any reasonable standard. King Peter listens to this accusation with mock seriousness that rivals any real judge, stroking his chin thoughtfully and nodding at appropriate moments. He asks detailed questions about the chickens' diet, their housing conditions, and whether they've been provided with adequate motivation to improve their performance. His questions demonstrate a thorough understanding of chicken psychology and egg production that surprises everyone, including Martha. After due consideration, he calls for his royal advisors, who turn out to be three of the village's biggest troublemakers dressed in fancy hats made from paper and decorated with feathers. Henrik, Gustav, and Willem have been transformed into wise counselors through the simple addition of ridiculous headgear, and they take their advisory roles as seriously as if they were members of a real royal council. The advisors huddle together in theatrical whispers, gesturing importantly and pointing at various pieces of evidence that Martha has brought to support her case. The evidence includes several of the offending small eggs, a sample of the grain the chickens have been eating, and a written petition signed by several neighbors who can testify to the declining size of Martha's eggs over recent weeks. After much dramatic consultation, King Peter renders his judgment with royal authority that no one questions. The chickens must be tried for treason against the crown, but until their trial date can be arranged, they shall be fed extra grain and provided with comfortable nests to encourage better performance. If the eggs don't improve within 1 week, the chickens will face the ultimate punishment, being served at the next festival feast. The crowd cheers at this solution, which manages to be both ridiculous and practical, addressing Martha's real concern about her chickens' productivity while maintaining the playful spirit of the mock court. Martha curtsies gratefully before returning to the audience, apparently satisfied that justice will be served and her chickens will receive appropriate motivation to improve their work. The next petitioner is Willem, still wearing his wife's clothes from yesterday's role reversals, who has added a woman's cap and apron to complete his feminine disguise. His appearance draws laughter from the crowd, but his case is presented with the same formal dignity that Martha showed. He claims that his turnips have been gossiping about his neighbors and spreading false rumors throughout the vegetable garden. According to Willem's testimony, the turnips hold secret meetings at night and share scandalous information about various villagers, then spread these stories to other vegetables in neighboring gardens. He provides detailed evidence of the turnips' malicious behavior, including specific examples of the rumors they've been spreading and testimony from his cabbages, who claim to have overheard the turnips' gossip sessions. The accusations include claims that the baker's wife has been watering down her bread dough, that the blacksmith has been using inferior iron in his horseshoes, and that Father Benedict's sermons are too long because he enjoys the sound of his own voice. These are exactly the kinds of petty rumors that actually circulate in village life, and presenting them as turnip gossip allows people to laugh at the absurdity while acknowledging real social tensions. King Peter considers this case with even greater seriousness than Martha's chicken problem, recognizing the threat that vegetable gossip poses to community harmony. He orders a full investigation of the turnip patch, complete with individual interrogations of suspect vegetables and testimony from reliable witnesses among the root vegetables. The turnips found guilty of slander will be dug up and punished according to the severity of their crimes. You find yourself caught up in the theatrical atmosphere and decide to present your own case to the royal court. Approaching the throne with your best attempt at noble bearing, you bow as deeply as you've seen real courtiers bow to real nobility, then announce that you wish to file a complaint against the sun for rising too early and disrupting your sleep. Your accusation draws appreciative murmurs from the crowd, who recognize the creativity of your grievance and the skill with which you present it. You argue that the sun has been showing up for work before its scheduled time, causing unnecessary hardship for people who prefer to sleep until full daylight arrives. This early rising violates the ancient agreement between the celestial bodies and earthbound humans, and you demand royal intervention to restore proper timing to the cosmic order. King Peter leans forward with obvious interest, clearly enjoying his role as supreme arbiter of justice in all matters affecting village life. He asks whether you've attempted to negotiate directly with the sun, whether you've filed formal complaints with other celestial authorities, and what compensation you seek for the sleep you've lost due to premature dawn arrivals. After consulting with his advisors, who bring impressive scholarly authority to bear on questions of solar behavior and cosmic justice, King Peter declares that the sun has indeed been too eager in its duties and must be instructed to rise 1 hour later tomorrow. He appoints you as the official sun negotiator, responsible for communicating this royal decree to the celestial body and ensuring compliance with the court's decision. Your new title comes with impressive credentials: a paper crown decorated with gold stars and a wooden staff topped with a carved sun face. You accept both symbols of office with the dignity befitting your important position as intermediary between earthly and heavenly authorities. The crowd cheers your appointment, and several people approach afterward to discuss additional solar grievances they'd like you to address during your negotiations. The mock court continues with increasingly ridiculous cases that somehow manage to address real concerns through absurdist comedy. Someone accuses their shadow of following too closely without permission, demanding that royal guards arrest the shadow for stalking. Another person claims their ale cup has been drinking by itself during the night, causing mysterious decreases in household ale supplies that can't be explained by ordinary consumption. An elderly man insists his walking stick has been going for walks without him, leaving the house at night and returning muddy and tired in the morning. He presents evidence including mud samples and testimony from neighbors who claim to have seen an unaccompanied walking stick wandering through the village streets after midnight. He demands that the stick be fitted with a bell so he can track its nocturnal adventures. Each case receives serious consideration from King Peter and his advisors, and each judgment becomes more creative and absurd than the last. The shadow stalker is sentenced to community service, helping people who complain their shadows are too short. The self-drinking ale cup must attend meetings for vessels with drinking problems. The wandering walking stick will be paired with a companion walking stick to ensure proper supervision during its evening constitutional. Between cases, musicians provide entertainment fit for a royal court, playing elaborate fanfares whenever King Peter raises his scepter or announces a particularly important decision. The music is intentionally overblown and dramatic, adding to the theatrical atmosphere with trumpeted flourishes that would make any real royal court seem understated by comparison. Dancers perform between petitioners, executing moves that parody the formal court dances that real nobility enjoys. Their performances include exaggerated bows and curtsy attempts that often end in laughter and tumbling, creating entertainment that comments on the artificial nature of courtly behavior while celebrating the natural joy of human movement. The Real village lord appears near midday, and instead of being offended by this elaborate parody of his authority and status, he joins the fun by presenting a case against his own horse. He accuses the animal of refusing to gallop in straight lines, causing him to arrive late for important appointments and making him look foolish in front of visiting dignitaries. Lord Geoffrey's willingness to participate in mocking the very power structure he normally represents fills you with amazement and admiration. His case against his horse is presented with the same formal language he might use in real legal proceedings, but the content is purely comedic. He provides evidence of the horse's erratic behavior, including maps of their wandering routes and testimony from stable boys who have witnessed the horse's refusal to follow direct commands. During festival time, even the most serious hierarchies can be questioned and laughed at without consequence, and Lord Geoffrey's participation demonstrates his understanding of the festival's deeper purpose. By allowing his authority to be mocked, he actually strengthens his relationship with his subjects, showing that he can laugh at himself and doesn't take his position so seriously that it prevents him from joining in community celebration. King Peter's court session reaches its peak when a herald announces that the royal kitchen will serve a feast worthy of the new monarchy. The announcement is delivered with all the pomp and ceremony that would accompany a real royal feast, complete with detailed descriptions of the magnificent dishes that await the court's attention. The royal kitchen turns out to be several village women working over outdoor fires, but they've prepared their simple fare with elaborate presentation that transforms ordinary food into dishes fit for temporary royalty. Ordinary stew becomes royal pottage enriched with herbs gathered by moonlight. Bread becomes imperial loaves blessed by the crown, and ale becomes nectar of the gods fermented in celestial barrels. The fancy names and formal presentation make everything taste somehow more special, demonstrating the power of ceremony and imagination to transform everyday experiences into something memorable and meaningful. A simple meal becomes a royal banquet through the addition of creativity and shared belief in the power of festival magic. You eat your royal meal sitting on the ground with your fellow courtiers, using wooden bowls and spoons but treating them as if they were made of gold and silver. King Peter holds court over the afternoon's entertainment from his hay bale throne, receiving reports from various royal officials who have been appointed to oversee different aspects of the celebration. Jugglers attempt to amuse their temporary monarch, failing spectacularly and earning laughter rather than punishment for their clumsiness. Their dropped balls and missed catches become part of the entertainment rather than embarrassments to be hidden, and their gracious acceptance of failure adds to the atmosphere of joy and acceptance that characterizes the entire festival. Musicians play increasingly silly songs commissioned specifically for the royal court, including ballads about brave knights who rescue damsels in distress from aggressive turnips and epic poems about the heroic deeds of various kitchen utensils. The absurd subject matter is treated with complete seriousness, creating entertainment that celebrates imagination while gently mocking the pretensions of real courtly culture. Dancers perform routines that grow more ridiculous with each performance, incorporating props like wooden swords, cooking pots, and farm tools into elaborate choreography that tells stories about the daily life of ordinary people elevated to mythic status through the magic of performance and pretense. The afternoon sun grows warm on your face as you realize how completely the festival has transformed your understanding of authority and social order. For these precious hours, power belongs to whoever can make others laugh hardest, and wisdom is measured by the creativity of one's absurdity rather than by birth, wealth, or education. King Peter, who normally has no voice in village decisions, and whose opinions are rarely sought on any matter of importance, now commands everyone's attention and respect through humor and imagination rather than inherited status or accumulated wealth. His temporary reign demonstrates that leadership can emerge from unexpected places when communities create opportunities for hidden talents to flourish. The afternoon brings a new festival tradition that transforms your entire village into a parade of holy madness. A procession that celebrates the sacred and the absurd with equal enthusiasm. Someone rings the church bell in a pattern you've never heard before, wild and joyful rather than solemn, and shouts that the pilgrimage of fools is about to begin. Immediately people start forming a procession unlike anything you've ever seen, a parade that mocks religious ceremony while somehow creating its own form of genuine spiritual experience. Instead of the solemn religious processions that normally move through your village during holy days, with their careful order and reverent silence, this parade celebrates the absurd and impossible with joyful chaos that seems to embrace every contradiction of human nature. The formation is deliberately disorganized, with people joining wherever they feel like standing, children weaving between adults, and no concern for the social hierarchies that usually determine who stands where during formal ceremonies. At the front of the procession, Father Benedict leads the way, but he's abandoned his usual ceremonial robes for a costume that makes him look like a traveling fool or wandering entertainer. His jester's cap from yesterday now sports even more bells, tiny brass ones that create a constant musical accompaniment to his movements, and he's added colorful ribbons that flutter behind him like festival streamers. Instead of carrying his usual holy symbols, he bears a staff topped with a grinning wooden face that has been carved and painted to look like the essence of joy itself. The face shows bulging eyes, a wide smile, and rosy cheeks that make it look perpetually delighted with the world. The staff itself has been decorated with flowers, ribbons, and small bells that add to the musical chaos of his movement. Behind Father Benedict, the altar boys who usually assist with serious religious ceremonies now wave banners made from kitchen towels and carry relics that include items of questionable holiness. Their collection includes a blessed chicken bone claimed to have healing powers for people who laugh too little, a holy turnip that supposedly grants wisdom to anyone who can solve its riddles, and a sacred ale cup that never empties as long as the drinker maintains a pure heart and a sense of humor. The altar boys have thrown themselves into their roles with enthusiasm that surpasses their usual church duties, inventing elaborate histories for their comic relics and presenting them with such conviction that people actually reach out to touch them for luck. Their makeshift banners flutter in the breeze, displaying symbols that combine Christian imagery with festival foolishness in ways that somehow enhance rather than diminish the spiritual atmosphere. You join the parade as it begins to wind through the village streets, following a route that deliberately parodies the traditional religious processions held during Easter and other holy days. But instead of stopping at established shrines to offer prayers for salvation or divine intercession, the procession stops at ordinary places that have been temporarily designated as sacred sites of foolishness and joy. The bakery becomes a temple dedicated to the god of burnt bread, with a hastily constructed altar made from overturned bread baskets and decorated with loaves that have been baked into amusing shapes. The shrine includes offerings of deliberately burnt crusts and prayers written on flour-dusted paper, asking for divine protection against culinary disasters and the wisdom to know when bread is properly done. The smithy transforms into a shrine honoring the patron saint of crooked horseshoes, complete with an altar made from bent iron and decorations that include horseshoes hammered into heart shapes and pretzel twists. The shrine celebrates the beauty of imperfection and the divine nature of honest mistakes, encouraging people to embrace their flaws rather than hiding them in shame. The village well becomes a holy site dedicated to water that tastes like water, with ceremonies that celebrate the miraculous ordinariness of daily necessities. People lower buckets and draw up water that they declare to be blessed with the power of wetness and the divine gift of quenching thirst, then share it with reverent gratitude for life's simple pleasures. At each stop, Father Benedict delivers mock sermons that blend religious language with completely absurd content, creating entertainment that somehow manages to be both sacred and silly simultaneously. His delivery maintains the cadence and authority of real preaching, but the content celebrates joy, laughter, and the holiness of human happiness rather than focusing on sin, judgment, and eternal punishment. At the bakery shrine, he preaches about the spiritual significance of yeast and declares that all bread that rises properly has been touched by divine grace and blessed with the power to bring people together around shared meals. His words are clearly parody, but they're delivered with such theatrical conviction and genuine warmth that the crowd responds with heartfelt enthusiasm. People shout Amen and Hallelujah at appropriate moments, their responses carrying the same energy they bring to real religious services, but directed toward celebrations of daily life and human community rather than abstract theological concepts. The mock sermon becomes a real affirmation of the sacredness found in ordinary experiences when approached with gratitude and joy. The procession grows longer and more elaborate as it moves through the village, picking up participants who abandon their daily activities to join the celebration. Children dart in and out of the parade lines with natural grace. Elderly people are helped along by younger neighbors who ensure everyone can participate regardless of physical limitations. And even the village dogs seem to sense the festive atmosphere and follow along with wagging tails and excited barking. The whole community becomes part of this moving celebration of sacred silliness. A river of people flowing through familiar streets transformed into something magical by the power of shared imagination and collective joy. Neighbors who rarely speak to each other find themselves walking side by side, sharing jokes and singing songs that celebrate the absurd holiness of festival time. Musicians scattered throughout the procession play hymns that have been cleverly modified to include verses about the holiness of dancing, the divine nature of laughter, and the sacred duty to enjoy life while you have the chance. The familiar melodies make the absurd lyrics even funnier, creating music that honors traditional religious forms while celebrating very different values. You find yourself singing along to songs that praise Saint Turnip, protector of root vegetables and patron of underground wisdom, and blessed Brother Ale, who watches over fermentation and grants courage to shy dancers. The modified hymns manage to be both respectful and ridiculous, honoring the structure of religious music while filling it with content that celebrates earthly rather than heavenly joys. The parade stops at Margaret the Baker's house, which has been temporarily designated as the cathedral of the goddess of burnt pies, complete with elaborate decorations that transform her humble dwelling into a shrine worthy of pilgrimage. Margaret herself appears in a costume made from flour sacks and kitchen towels, carrying a rolling pin like a bishop's staff and wearing a crown made from twisted bread dough. She delivers a blessing over the crowd with authority that rivals any real religious official, asking the goddess to protect all bakers from overly hot ovens and to grant the divine gift of perfectly golden crusts to all who need with pure hearts and clean hands. Her blessing is both parody and genuine prayer, asking for protection from real dangers while maintaining the playful spirit of festival celebration. Your sides ache from continuous laughter as the procession continues to the village outskirts, where someone has constructed an elaborate shrine to the patron saint of lost sheep. The shrine consists of a wooden staff stuck in the ground and decorated with wool, flowers, and small bells, surrounded by offerings that include toy sheep carved from wood and prayers written on scraps of cloth. Thomas the shepherd leads everyone in prayers for sheep that wander too far from the flock, asking Saint Woollyhead to guide lost lambs back to safety and to grant wisdom to shepherds who sometimes lose track of their charges. His solemn delivery of completely ridiculous petitions keeps the crowd in continuous giggles, while also acknowledging the real challenges of his profession. The shepherd's prayers include requests for divine intervention in matters of sheep psychology, for protection against wolves both literal and metaphorical, and for the patience to deal with animals whose intelligence sometimes seems deliberately designed to test human sanity. His combination of genuine pastoral concern with absurd theological speculation creates entertainment that honors his work while celebrating its more frustrating aspects. The return journey follows a different route through the village, stopping at locations that represent various patron saints of festival foolishness, each with their own shrine and specialized area of divine responsibility. The saints include figures like Saint Stumblefoot, who protects dancers from tripping during complicated steps, and Saint Empty Cup, who ensures that ale barrels never truly run dry as long as the community maintains proper reverence for fermented beverages. Saint Backwards watches over people who wear their clothes inside out for good luck, granting them protection from evil spirits who are confused by reversed clothing and therefore unable to cause mischief. Each saint receives appropriate offerings from devoted followers: flowers for Saint Stumblefoot, drops of ale for Saint Empty Cup, and inside-out caps for Saint Backwards. The parade includes elaborate ceremonies at each shrine, with formal presentations of offerings and prayers that combine genuine religious feeling with playful invention. People approach each saint's shrine with the same reverence they would show at a real religious site, but their prayers ask for help with problems like chronic seriousness, insufficient laughter, and the inability to see joy in ordinary experiences. As the procession winds back toward the village center, Father Benedict announces that the final stop will be the most sacred site of all, the place where seriousness goes to die during festival time. This turns out to be a small clearing behind the church where someone has dug a shallow hole and surrounded it with flowers, creating a grave for all the negative emotions and harsh thoughts that have no place during celebration. The crowd gathers around this grave of solemnity, while Father Benedict delivers a funeral sermon for worries, fears, and stern thoughts that prevent people from experiencing joy. The mock funeral becomes surprisingly moving despite its absurd premise, as people actually participate in burying the psychological burdens that weigh them down during ordinary times. People throw symbolic objects into the hole with genuine emotion. Small stones representing their worries about the future, dried leaves representing their fears about things beyond their control, and twigs representing the harsh words they've spoken during the year. The act of literally burying these negative things feels cleansing and meaningful, even within the context of festival parody. The ritual allows people to acknowledge their problems while also choosing to set them aside temporarily, creating mental space for the joy and connection that the festival celebrates. The symbolic burial becomes a real release from psychological burdens, demonstrating the power of ritual to create genuine transformation, even when conducted in a spirit of playful irreverence. The procession ends with everyone forming a circle around the grave of seriousness and singing a song about the resurrection of joy that occurs whenever communities choose to celebrate life rather than dwelling on its difficulties. The melody is simple and repetitive, easy for everyone to learn quickly, and the words speak about laughter rising from the ground like spring flowers and happiness flowing like streams after winter thaws. Your voice joins with dozens of others in harmonies that seem to rise toward the sky like visible prayers, creating a sound that feels both silly and sacred at the same time. The song celebrates the eternal return of joy, the cyclical nature of human emotions, and the power of community celebration to transform individual sorrow into shared happiness. As the sun begins to set on the second day, you realize the pilgrimage of fools has accomplished something remarkable and unexpected. By parodying religious ceremony, it has somehow created its own form of genuine spiritual experience that honors both tradition and innovation, both reverence and irreverence, both the sacred and the profane. The laughter and absurdity have brought the community together in a way that feels holy, even if it looks completely unholy to outside observers who don't understand the deeper currents of meaning flowing beneath the surface comedy. The knowledge fills you with wonder at the mysterious ways human celebration can touch the divine, creating sacred experiences through means that conventional religion might condemn, but that somehow achieve the same goals of community bonding and spiritual uplift. As darkness falls on the second evening, your village transforms yet again into something that seems pulled from a dream where reality bends to accommodate impossible possibilities. Torches appear in unusual places, creating pools of flickering light connected by shadows that dance and shift with each gust of wind. The familiar streets and buildings look different in the torch light, more mysterious and magical, as if the ordinary world has been replaced by something from a fairy tale. Between the regular festival activities that continue from previous days, a strange new marketplace has appeared along the village's main street, staffed by people you don't quite recognize and selling things that seem too unusual to be real. The vendors have set up their stalls using materials that shimmer and glow in ways that ordinary cloth would never do, and their merchandise displays items that challenge your understanding of what's possible in the everyday world. You wander among the market stalls with curiosity, enhanced by the lingering effects of the day's ale and the magical atmosphere that seems to make anything believable. The first vendor you encounter is an old woman with flowers woven through her gray hair, but the flowers seem to glow with their own inner light, and her eyes hold depths that suggest she might be much older than she appears. She claims to sell bottled moonbeams for people who want to see clearly in the dark, and her display includes dozens of small glass bottles containing a silvery liquid that glows faintly in the torchlight. The liquid moves like mercury, but with a luminescence that ordinary metal doesn't possess, and when she holds up a bottle for demonstration, the light seems to pulse gently like a captured heartbeat. She demonstrates the moonbeam's power by dabbing a drop of the silvery substance on her eyelids, then pointing out details in the shadows between torch pools that you can't see even when you strain your eyes. She describes the color of flowers that are invisible in the darkness, reads signs painted on distant buildings, and even identifies specific people moving through areas where you can see only vague shapes. The price for her bottled moonbeams is only a song, she explains with a voice that sounds like wind chimes made from silver, and several people pay her asking price with ballads and drinking songs that she listens to with obvious pleasure. Each song seems to make her bottles glow slightly brighter, as if the music itself feeds the captured moonbeams and increases their power. The next stall displays what the merchant calls seeds of laughter, tiny brown pellets that he claims will grow into plants that produce giggles instead of fruit. The merchant is a young man with twinkling eyes and clothes that seem to be cut from fabric woven from spider webs and morning mist, though when you look directly at them, they appear to be ordinary brown wool. He demonstrates his product's effectiveness by planting one seed in a small pot of soil while you watch, watering it with what looks like liquid sunshine poured from a bottle that seems to contain trapped sunbeams. Within moments of receiving this unusual irrigation, a tiny green shoot appears, trembling with what might be suppressed mirth or simply the motion created by rapid growth. The plant continues growing as you watch, developing leaves that seem to quiver with barely contained amusement, and when a gentle breeze touches them, you swear you can hear tiny giggles emerging from the foliage. Whether it's real magic or extraordinarily clever trickery, the sight fills you with delight and wonder, and you find yourself seriously considering whether you have a song good enough to trade for some miracle seeds. A mysterious figure draped in dark cloth that seems to absorb light rather than reflecting it offers to read futures in ale foam, claiming that the bubbles in fermented beverages reveal more truth than tea leaves, crystal balls, or any other traditional fortune-telling method. His voice emerges from the depths of his hood like an echo from a deep well, and his hands, when they emerge to gesture, are pale as moonlight and surprisingly graceful. You watch as he peers intently into a customer's mug with concentration that suggests he's reading an incredibly complex text written in a language only he can understand. He nods sagely and predicts that she will dance with 3 strangers before midnight, discover something she lost last spring, and receive an unexpected gift from someone whose name begins with the same letter as her favorite flower. The prediction seems both specific enough to be meaningful and vague enough to be believable, and you notice people checking their ale foam carefully after leaving his stall, trying to decipher their own fortunes in the patterns of bubbles that float on the surface of their drinks. The fortune teller's booth creates its own atmosphere of mystery and possibility that enhances the magical feeling of the entire night market. Another vendor sells what she calls borrowed time, claiming that anyone who purchases her wares will find extra hours in their day for the next week, time that can be used for any purpose the buyer chooses. Her merchandise consists of small silk pouches filled with sand from distant beaches, and she explains that time moves differently near the ocean, flowing more slowly and gently than the harsh, rapid time found in inland areas. The sand itself looks ordinary enough, but when she pours a small amount into her palm for demonstration, it seems to shimmer and flow in ways that regular sand doesn't, creating patterns that suggest the movement of waves and tides. She explains that carrying ocean sand allows you to access those slower, more peaceful hours whenever you need them, simply by holding the pouch and thinking about the rhythm of waves against the shore. The logic seems flawless in the magical atmosphere of the night market, where normal rules of physics and possibility have been temporarily suspended in favor of more interesting alternatives. Several customers exchange coins for the precious sand, and you find yourself wondering what you might do with extra time if such a thing were actually possible to purchase. You pause at a stall where a young man with paint-stained fingers offers to trade memories, claiming he can take away unpleasant experiences and replace them with better ones from his extensive collection. His display includes hundreds of small glass vials arranged on shelves that seem to extend further back than the stall's physical dimensions should allow. The vials are labeled with descriptions written in delicate script that glows faintly in the torchlight. First taste of honey, mother's lullaby, summer rain after drought. The sound of children laughing in a distant room. The smell of bread baking before dawn, and hundreds of other moments of beauty and contentment captured like butterflies pinned to display boards. The memory trader explains that each vial contains a complete sensory experience donated by someone who had so many good memories that they could afford to share their extras with people whose lives have been harder or sadder. The prices vary depending on the intensity and rarity of the memory, and he guarantees complete satisfaction or promises to return your original unpleasant experience with no hard feelings and a small compensation for your trouble. The strangest vendor of all claims to sell pieces of tomorrow, displaying small wooden tokens carved with intricate symbols that supposedly represent future events. She is an elderly woman whose age is impossible to determine, and her tokens are arranged on a black cloth that seems to absorb torchlight and reflect back tiny glimmers like distant stars. Each token tells a story in miniature through its carved symbols. A tiny horse for unexpected journeys, a miniature heart for new love, a carved coin for financial good fortune, a tiny flower for personal growth, and dozens of others representing every possible future happiness. She explains that carrying one of these tokens will increase your chances of experiencing the represented event, though she's careful to note that the tokens influence probability rather than guaranteeing specific outcomes. Her tokens are surprisingly detailed despite their small size, carved with skill that suggests years of practice and artistic talent that transforms simple wood into objects that seem to pulse with potential energy. Each one feels warm to the touch and seems to weigh more than its size would suggest, as if it contains something denser and more significant than ordinary wood. Between the mysterious vendors who may or may not be entirely real, regular villagers have set up their own stalls selling conventional festival goods with unconventional presentations that transform ordinary items into magical merchandise. The transformation demonstrates how packaging and presentation can change people's perception of familiar objects, making the everyday seem extraordinary through the power of imagination and skillful marketing. The baker offers bread that never grows stale, which turns out to be regular bread that has been blessed by King Peter in an elaborate ceremony involving much waving of his turnip scepter and the recitation of ancient-sounding words that are actually nonsense syllables arranged to sound meaningful. The blessing ceremony itself becomes part of the purchase, creating an experience rather than simply selling a product. The alewife sells courage in a cup, which is her strongest brew mixed with herbs that are reputed to make drinkers feel brave and confident. The herbs include chamomile for calmness, mint for clear thinking, and other plants whose effects may be more psychological than physical, but which certainly create the expectation of increased bravery in anyone who drinks the specially prepared mixture. The candle maker offers flames that burn away sadness, which are ordinary candles that have been scented with herbs and oils chosen for their uplifting properties. The candles smell like happiness itself when burned, releasing fragrances that include lavender. The candle maker offers flames that burn away sadness, which are ordinary candles that have been scented with herbs and oils chosen for their uplifting properties. The candles smell like happiness itself when burned, releasing fragrances that include lavender for peace, rosemary for remembrance of good times, and other scents that have been carefully blended to create an atmosphere of contentment and joy. Musicians move through the market playing music that seems to match each vendor's wares with supernatural precision. Near the moonbeam cellar, they play ethereal melodies on wooden flutes that sound like captured whispers of wind through silver leaves. The music itself seems to glow, creating an auditory backdrop that makes the mysterious merchandise seem even more magical and desirable. By the memory trader's stall, musicians perform nostalgic songs about childhood summers, lost loves, and moments of perfect happiness that everyone has experienced but few remember clearly. The melodies unlock emotions and memories in listeners, creating a perfect atmosphere for someone considering whether to trade away painful experiences in exchange for borrowed joy. At the fortune teller's booth, musicians create mysterious rhythms on small drums that sound like heartbeats or distant thunder, adding an element of suspense and anticipation that makes people more receptive to predictions about their futures. The drum beats seem to synchronize with the pulse of anyone listening, creating a hypnotic effect that makes the fortune teller's predictions seem more credible and significant. The music weaves everything together into a unified experience of wonder and possibility, transforming individual stalls into components of a larger magical marketplace, where anything might be possible and every purchase might change your life in unexpected ways. The musicians themselves seem different from the regular village band, playing instruments you don't recognize and wearing clothes that shimmer in torchlight like fabric woven from moonbeams and shadow. You find yourself drawn to a vendor who claims to sell bottled festival spirit, saying that anyone who purchases her wares can uncork the bottle during ordinary days and instantly recapture the joy and excitement of celebration. Her bottles contain a golden liquid that sparkles like captured sunlight, and when she opens one for demonstration, the scent that emerges smells like music and laughter combined with the essence of perfect summer days. The bottled festival spirit appears to contain tiny bubbles of light that dance and swirl within the golden liquid, creating patterns that remind you of spinning dancers, falling leaves, and all the beautiful movement you've witnessed during these days of celebration. The vendor explains that each bottle contains enough festival spirit for 12 uses, enough to carry someone through an entire year of ordinary days when joy feels distant and celebration seems impossible. The price is reasonable by night market standards. One perfect memory of tonight's celebration, which she claims she'll preserve carefully for future festivals and use to create even more potent bottles of festival spirit. The idea of trading a memory for the ability to recapture celebration whenever you need it seems like a fair exchange, and you find yourself seriously considering whether you can spare one of tonight's magical moments. The night market operates by rules that seem to shift and change depending on who's asking questions and what they hope to purchase. Vendors accept payment in songs, stories, dances, good wishes, heartfelt compliments, and promises to remember the magic of festival time during the gray days of ordinary life. Money occasionally changes hands, but more often the transactions involve intangible exchanges that somehow feel more valuable than coins. The flexible pricing system allows everyone to participate regardless of their financial resources, and it creates a sense that the marketplace exists primarily to distribute wonder and possibility rather than to generate profit. The vendors seem more interested in finding appropriate homes for their magical merchandise than in accumulating wealth, and many of them refuse payment from customers who seem to need their products most desperately. You sample several mysterious wares during your exploration of the market, accepting tastes and demonstrations that the vendors offer freely to potential customers. A sip of bottled moonbeam does seem to enhance your night vision, though whether from magic or the power of suggestion remains unclear. A pinch of laughter seeds makes you giggle uncontrollably for several minutes, though the effect might be caused by the absurdity of the situation rather than any supernatural properties. A moment spent holding a piece of tomorrow fills you with optimism about future possibilities, though the feeling might simply reflect the general happiness and hope that pervades the entire festival. Whether the magic is real or psychological doesn't diminish its effectiveness, and you leave each vendor's stall feeling slightly transformed by the experience. As you move through the market, sampling the mysterious wares and listening to impossible sales pitches, you realize that the question of whether the magic is genuine doesn't actually matter. The night market creates its own reality where anything seems possible, where the boundary between the everyday world and the realm of dreams becomes permeable enough to allow wonder to flow freely between them. In this atmosphere, purchasing bottled moonbeams feels as reasonable as buying bread. Trading memories seems like practical business, and investing in pieces of tomorrow appears to be simple common sense. The market operates on principles of hope and imagination rather than the practical economics that govern ordinary commerce, creating transactions that enrich the spirit even when their effects on the physical world remain questionable. The vendors themselves add to the mysterious atmosphere by seeming to exist halfway between the ordinary world and someplace else entirely. They speak with authority about their impossible merchandise, demonstrate products that violate natural laws, and accept payment in currencies that have no value outside the magical economy they've created for these few hours of festival time. Some vendors appear to be villagers you recognize dressed in costumes and playing roles, but others seem genuinely foreign, speaking with accents you can't place and demonstrating knowledge of things no one in your village should know about. Whether they're elaborate actors or actual visitors from distant magical places becomes another mystery that enhances rather than detracts from the market's otherworldly atmosphere. The market begins to close as midnight approaches, with vendors packing their mysterious wares into bags and boxes that seem too small to hold everything they displayed during the evening. Their packing methods appear to violate basic principles of space and volume. But by this point in the night, such impossibilities seem perfectly reasonable within the market's magical logic. As vendors disappear into the shadows between torch pools, carrying their impossible merchandise to unknown destinations, you wonder whether you'll see them again tomorrow night, or whether they only exist during the specific magical conditions created by festival celebration. The uncertainty adds to the wonder rather than diminishing it, leaving you with questions that feel more valuable than definitive answers would be. The night market dissolves as mysteriously as it appeared, leaving behind only the lingering scent of impossible spices, the echo of music played on instruments that don't exist, and memories of conversations about magic that might or might not have actually happened. But the effects of your purchases and experiences remain, creating subtle changes in your perception and mood that will influence how you experience the final day of celebration. The third dawn brings the most radical transformation yet witnessed during these days of celebration. You wake to discover that your entire village has turned completely upside down overnight, not physically but socially, and the change is so complete and thorough that it takes your breath away and makes you question everything you thought you understood about the natural order of human society. The servants of wealthy families now wear their master's finest clothes and sit in positions of authority, making decisions and giving orders with newfound confidence, while the lords and ladies dress in simple peasant garments and wait patiently to be given instructions by their former inferiors. The transformation extends to every aspect of village life, creating a world where status depends on festival roles rather than inherited position. King Peter still wears his festival crown, the twisted branches now decorated with fresh flowers that villagers have brought as tribute to their temporary monarch. But now he's joined by Queen Margaret, the baker's wife, who has been elected to rule over all domestic matters during this final day of celebration. Her election was conducted with full democratic ceremony, complete with speeches, debates, and a formal vote that gave her overwhelming popular support. Queen Margaret sits on a throne constructed from kitchen furniture, chairs stacked and bound together with rope, then draped with the finest tablecloths in the village to create a seat that manages to look both humble and regal simultaneously. She wears a gown constructed from layered tablecloths in different colors, creating a rainbow effect that makes her appear to be clothed in celebration itself. And she holds a scepter carved from a rolling pin and decorated with carved symbols representing all the domestic arts. Her first royal decree, delivered with the same authority that King Peter has shown throughout his reign, declares that for the next 24 hours, all cooking must be done by men while women supervise and offer helpful criticism. The reversal is designed to give everyone new appreciation for tasks they normally take for granted, and the results promise to be both educational and highly entertaining. You watch in amazement as the blacksmith, whose massive hands are skilled at shaping iron into horseshoes and tools, attempts to bake bread under the stern supervision of his wife, who has appointed herself head baker for the day. His fingers, so confident when working with hammer and anvil, fumble helplessly with the delicate work of kneading dough and shaping loaves. The dough seems to have a will of its own under his inexperienced handling, sticking to his fingers, refusing to hold its shape, and generally behaving in ways that bread dough never does when his wife works with it. The bread that emerges from his efforts looks like lumpy stones or abstract sculptures, but his wife declares it fit for royal consumption and orders it served at the high table with great ceremony and elaborate praise for its unique artistic qualities. The village priest, now dressed in humble brown robes instead of his festival fool costume, sits quietly in the back of the church while young Thomas the shepherd delivers a sermon about the spiritual significance of sheep and the lessons they teach about human community. Thomas has prepared for this responsibility with obvious care, and he speaks with surprising eloquence about subjects that he knows intimately through daily experience. His sermon explores how sheep teach humans about the importance of community, the value of loyalty to those who care for your welfare, and the wisdom of staying close to trusted guides when facing unknown dangers. Thomas draws parallels between the shepherd's relationship with his flock and the community's relationship with its leaders, creating theological insights that emerge naturally from his practical experience rather than abstract study. The congregation listens to Thomas's words with the same attention they usually give Father Benedict's more traditional homilies, and many people nod in recognition as he describes the challenges of caring for creatures who don't always understand what's best for them. His sermon demonstrates that wisdom can emerge from any occupation when approached with thoughtfulness and genuine care for others. Children have been appointed to positions of village authority that would normally be reserved for adults, with 12-year-old Annie serving as the temporary mayor and 10-year-old Robin acting as chief judge for all disputes. Their elevation to positions of responsibility is more than symbolic, as they're actually making real decisions that affect village life during this day of reversal. Their decisions show the simple wisdom that adults often forget in their complicated approaches to problem solving. When two farmers present a dispute over a boundary line that has been causing arguments for months, Robin listens carefully to both sides, then suggests they plant flowers along the disputed border and share the beauty equally. His solution pleases both parties more than any legal ruling based on property law could have achieved. Annie addresses the village's problem with stray dogs by organizing the children into teams that will provide food and care for the animals, turning a nuisance into an opportunity for young people to learn responsibility while solving a community problem. Her approach demonstrates the kind of creative thinking that adult administrators often lose in their focus on rules and precedents. You find yourself assigned to serve Lady Elizabeth, the Lord's wife, who has been given temporary employment as a scullery maid in her own kitchen. The irony of the situation is not lost on anyone involved, but Lady Elizabeth approaches her new role with surprising enthusiasm and genuine curiosity about work she's never had to do personally. She attacks the pots and pans with determination that would be admirable if it were combined with any actual knowledge of how to properly scrub burned food from cooking vessels. Her technique involves much splashing and energetic scrubbing that accomplishes little beyond getting herself thoroughly soaked and creating impressive amounts of soapy foam. You show her the proper method your mother taught you, using sand and strong soap applied with patience rather than force, and watch her face light up with genuine accomplishment when she produces her first gleaming pot. The moment creates an unexpected connection between your different worlds, bridging the social gap through shared pride and honest work completed successfully. The role reversal extends to every aspect of village life, creating opportunities for understanding and empathy that would be impossible under normal circumstances. Children teach adults how to play games they've forgotten during their serious grown-up years. Servants instruct their masters in the proper techniques for mending clothes and tending fires. And the village fool gives genuinely wise advice to people who usually consider themselves his intellectual superiors. At the morning meal, you sit at the high table while Lord Geoffrey serves you bread and ale with careful attention to your comfort and preferences. His movements are awkward because he's unused to considering other people's needs before addressing his own. But his effort is sincere, and his attention to detail demonstrates real respect for his temporary role. When you thank him for the careful service, he seems genuinely surprised and pleased by your gratitude, as if he's never realized that appreciation feels good to receive regardless of your social position. The exchange suggests that the reversal might create permanent changes in how people relate to each other once the festival ends and normal roles resume. The most remarkable transformation involves the village's usual troublemakers, who have been appointed as keepers of peace and order for the day. Henrik, who normally starts fights after drinking too much ale, now mediates disputes between neighbors with patient wisdom that surprises everyone, including himself. His new role seems to have unlocked hidden talents for understanding people and finding common ground between opposing viewpoints. Gustav, known throughout the village for his quick temper and harsh words, now speaks gently to upset children and helps elderly neighbors with their daily tasks. The responsibility of maintaining community harmony seems to have brought out better qualities that usually stay hidden beneath his rough exterior, demonstrating that people often rise to meet the expectations placed upon them. Queen Margaret announces that the afternoon will feature competitions where normal advantages don't apply, contests designed to reward qualities that are often overlooked in ordinary life. There will be competitions of creativity rather than strength, imagination rather than skill, and kindness rather than cunning, creating opportunities for people to excel in areas where they might never have chanced to shine under normal circumstances. The prizes will go to people who find the most beautiful solutions to simple problems, who tell the most generous stories about their neighbors, and who invent the most joyful games for others to enjoy. The competition structure ensures that everyone has opportunities to win recognition for qualities they possess, rather than limiting success to people blessed with specific physical abilities or inherited advantages. As the morning progresses, you realize the great reversal accomplishes something profound that extends far beyond mere entertainment or temporary novelty. By forcing everyone to experience life from different perspectives, It creates genuine empathy between social classes and helps people understand the challenges and responsibilities that others face in their daily lives. The Lord learns through direct experience how much physical effort goes into maintaining his comfortable life, gaining appreciation for work he previously took for granted. While servants discover that leadership involves constant decision-making and responsibility for others' welfare rather than simply enjoying privileges and luxury. The traditional boundaries between sacred and secular blur completely during the Great Reversal, as ordinary work takes on ritual significance and everyday activities become opportunities for spiritual growth. When the Lord's Son learns to milk cows under patient supervision from the dairy maid, the lesson becomes a ceremony about gentleness, persistence, and the sacred relationship between humans and the animals that sustain them. You spend the late morning learning embroidery from Lady Elizabeth, who has temporarily become your student in kitchen work, but remains your teacher in the fine needlework that noble ladies master as part of their education. Her hands guide yours as you attempt to create a simple flower pattern on a piece of cloth, and the quiet concentration required feels meditative and peaceful. The reversal of roles allows both of you to learn from each other without the usual barriers that separate your social classes, creating a relationship based on mutual respect and shared learning rather than hierarchy and inherited status. The experience suggests possibilities for cooperation and understanding that might continue even after normal social roles resume. By midday, the Great Reversal has transformed your village into a place where wisdom comes from unexpected sources, where authority belongs to those who use it kindly and thoughtfully, and where everyone contributes their unique gifts to the community's well-being without regard for traditional limitations or expectations. The artificial nature of the arrangement makes everyone more conscious of how social roles usually work and how they might work differently, and many people seem reluctant to return to the old patterns when the festival ends. The temporary taste of equality and mutual respect creates hunger for more permanent changes in how the community organizes itself and treats its members. The afternoon brings the most anticipated event of the entire 3-day festival: the Chaos Games, where normal rules of competition are completely abandoned in favor of contests that reward creativity, luck, and the ability to think in ways that would be considered completely inappropriate during serious competitions. The village square has been transformed overnight into a series of game stations, each more ridiculous and delightful than the last, and participants rotate through them like dancers changing partners in an elaborate celebration of human absurdity and joy. The games have been designed by committee, with suggestions collected from every household in the village, and the most amusing ideas developed into actual competitions. The result is a collection of challenges that test qualities rarely valued in ordinary life: the ability to maintain dignity while looking ridiculous, the skill of making others laugh while solving problems, and the talent for finding joy in activities that serve no practical purpose whatsoever. The first game you encounter involves racing while carrying an egg balanced on a wooden spoon. But these aren't ordinary eggs used for ordinary purposes. The eggs have been hard-boiled and carefully painted by the village children to look like tiny faces with expressions of terror, joy, confusion, and every other emotion that can be conveyed through 2 dots for eyes and a curved line for a mouth. The goal extends beyond simply avoiding dropping your egg during the race. Participants must also keep their painted passenger entertained throughout the journey by telling jokes, singing songs, or performing dramatic monologues about the meaning of breakfast and the philosophical implications of being an egg in a world full of hungry people. You balance your painted egg carefully on the wooden spoon. noting that your particular egg has been given a worried expression with large round eyes and a tiny frowning mouth that somehow manages to convey deep anxiety about its immediate future. As you begin to walk quickly toward the finish line, you start telling your egg companion about the time your neighbor's rooster fell desperately in love with a wooden duck and spent 3 days courting it with elaborate tail displays and romantic crowing. The absurdity of talking to an egg about courting roosters while trying to maintain balance and forward momentum makes you laugh, which causes you to wobble dangerously and nearly drop your worried passenger. Other contestants around you face similar challenges, creating a spectacle of people having animated conversations with painted eggs while attempting to navigate an obstacle course that includes hay bales to climb over and shallow puddles to step through. At the second station, contestants must attempt to throw wooden rings over posts while blindfolded and spinning in circles, which would be challenging enough under ordinary circumstances. But instead of conventional posts serving as targets, the game uses village volunteers wearing elaborate hats shaped like various animals, and these human targets are allowed to move around to make the competition more challenging and entertaining. The volunteers take their animal roles seriously, making appropriate sounds and movements that match their costume animals while trying to position themselves to help or hinder the ring throwers, depending on their mood and relationship with the contestants. You hear barking, mooing, bleating, and what sounds like someone attempting to roar like a lion while probably wearing a hat shaped like a house cat. Your blindfolded attempt at ring throwing becomes an exercise in comic futility as you stagger in circles, completely disoriented by the spinning and the cacophony of animal sounds, while trying to aim at targets you can hear but cannot see. The crowd's enthusiastic shouting of conflicting advice makes everything more confusing, and people call out directions like 3 steps to your left, and the pig is right behind you, simultaneously. When you finally release your wooden ring with a hopeful flourish, it apparently lands on someone's head rather than around their animal hat, based on the surprised yelp and the crowd's explosion of laughter. The victim turns out to be Father Benedict wearing a hat shaped like a sheep, and he bleats dramatically as if you've captured him for immediate slaughter while the audience applauds your unconventional success. The third game involves teams of 3 people attempting to build the tallest tower possible using only turnips and pieces of rope, which presents interesting engineering challenges under the best of circumstances. The construction must be completed while one team member hops continuously on one foot, another sings without stopping, and the third communicates only through elaborate hand gestures and facial expressions. Your team consists of yourself as the builder, Willem as the hopper, and young Martha as the singer, and you quickly discover that constructing anything stable while Willem bounces around the work area, singing increasingly breathless drinking songs, presents unique architectural challenges that weren't covered in any practical education you've received. Martha proves surprisingly talented at communicating complex construction concepts through hand gestures and dramatic facial expressions, pointing and waving to indicate that the tower's foundation needs to be wider to support additional turnip levels without toppling over. Her silent communications become increasingly elaborate as the tower grows taller, and she develops a sophisticated vocabulary of gestures that other teams begin copying for their own construction projects. You focus on the actual building process, carefully balancing turnips and securing them with rope, while Willem provides continuous musical accompaniment that grows increasingly breathless as he continues hopping on one foot. His song selections shift from traditional drinking songs to improvised ballads about the architectural properties of root vegetables and the spiritual significance of tower construction. Other teams around you face similar coordination challenges, and the air fills with off-key singing, the rhythmic thudding of people hopping on one foot, and occasional crashes when ambitious turnip towers collapse under their own weight or are knocked over by enthusiastic hoppers who venture too close to neighboring construction sites. The fourth station presents what might be the most ridiculous contest of all. Contestants must eat a bowl of thick porridge using only a fork while wearing thick gloves and simultaneously reciting original poetry about the spiritual significance of breakfast foods. The porridge has been made extra thick to make the task technically possible, but practically frustrating. And the poems must be original compositions created on the spot rather than memorized verses. You watch previous contestants struggle with their utensils through padded gloves while declaring profound truths about oats being the music of morning, each grain a note in the symphony of sustenance that awakens the sleeping soul to face another day of earthly challenges and celestial possibilities. The combination of physical awkwardness with creative verbal composition creates entertainment that's both intellectually and physically demanding. Your own attempt at porridge poetry proves more challenging than expected as you fumble with the fork through thick gloves that make fine motor control nearly impossible. You find yourself declaring that barley holds the dreams of fields where summer breezes whispered secrets to grain that would one day nourish bodies and souls seeking sustenance for the journey through life's mysterious pathways. The poetry flows more easily than the porridge, which stubbornly clings to the bowl and resists all attempts at fork-based removal. So most of your breakfast ends up decorating the table rather than reaching your mouth. The judges award points for poetic creativity and philosophical insight rather than successful food consumption, which seems appropriate given the impossible nature of eating porridge with a fork while wearing gloves. The fifth game requires contestants to race across the square while balancing books on their heads. But the books are all open to pages displaying amusing illustrations, and runners must describe what they see without looking down or allowing the books to fall. The pictures apparently include drawings of dancing pigs, upside-down castles, people with vegetables for heads, and other whimsical scenes that challenge contestants' descriptive abilities. Your book seems to contain an illustration of a knight engaged in combat with a dragon, except the dragon appears to be wearing an apron and attempting to bake bread while the knight offers helpful criticism about oven temperature and kneading technique. You describe this culinary battle scene while trying to maintain the steady posture necessary to keep the book balanced on your head. The book wobbles dangerously with each step, threatening to fall and end your participation in the game. So you find yourself walking with the exaggerated care of someone carrying precious eggs while simultaneously providing detailed commentary about medieval cooking instruction and the proper relationship between knights and dragons in kitchen settings. The games continue with increasingly creative challenges that test qualities no sensible person would consider important. Contestants must write love letters to vegetables, explaining their deep emotional attachment to turnips, carrots, or cabbages. Compose songs about the romantic lives of farm animals, including detailed verses about the courtship rituals of pigs and the marriage customs of chickens. And attempt to teach dance steps to scarecrows that have been dressed in festival clothing. For the occasion, each game rewards participants for originality and enthusiasm rather than traditional skills like strength, speed, or accuracy, creating an atmosphere where everyone can excel at something, even if that something is completely ridiculous and serves no practical purpose beyond generating laughter and community bonding. The love letter competition produces declarations of passion that include statements like, "Dearest turnip, your purple top and creamy white bottom have captured my heart completely, and I dream of the day when we can be together in a soup pot, united forever in culinary bliss." The creativity and sincerity with which people approach these absurd assignments creates entertainment that celebrates imagination while gently mocking romantic conventions. The farm animal romance songs include elaborate ballads about star-crossed lovers from different species, epic tales of barnyard courtship involving elaborate gift exchanges of choice scraps and comfortable nesting materials, and tragic stories about relationships destroyed by the intervention of farmers who don't understand true love between domestic animals. Teaching dance steps to scarecrows proves surprisingly challenging, as the straw-stuffed figures tend to collapse when moved too enthusiastically, and their stick arms don't bend in ways that allow for graceful movement. Contestants develop innovative choreography that works within the physical limitations of scarecrow anatomy, creating dances that involve mostly swaying and simple arm movements that won't cause structural damage to their partners. As the afternoon progresses, you realize the chaos games serve purposes that extend far beyond mere entertainment and community bonding. They encourage people to think creatively about problems, to find humor in difficulty, and to celebrate human ingenuity in solving completely unnecessary challenges that have been created purely for the joy of solving them. The games also level social distinctions by requiring everyone to look equally foolish while attempting impossible tasks, creating bonds through shared absurdity that transcend normal class boundaries and social hierarchies. When everyone is struggling to eat porridge with a fork while reciting poetry about breakfast, differences in social status become irrelevant compared to shared humanity and common absurdity. The competition concludes with a group challenge where the entire village must work together to create the longest human chain possible, while everyone sings the same song simultaneously. The challenge requires coordination, cooperation, and collective effort rather than individual skill or competition between participants. The human chain begins with just a few people holding hands, but it grows rapidly as more villagers join the line, weaving through streets, around buildings, and across the square as the chain expands to include every festival participant. The song grows louder and more joyful with each new voice that joins the chorus, creating music that celebrates community unity and shared purpose. When the chain finally includes every person in the village, from the youngest children to the oldest adults, the sense of community accomplishment feels as significant as any serious group effort the village has ever undertaken. The simple act of holding hands and singing together creates a powerful experience of belonging and connection that participants will remember long after the festival ends. The games end with everyone still linked together in the human chain, singing a song that celebrates the joy of being part of something larger than individual concerns or personal ambitions. The experience demonstrates that competition can build community rather than dividing it when the focus shifts from winning and losing to shared participation and collective creativity. As the sun begins to set on the third and final day of the festival, your village prepares for the culminating celebration that will close the festivities and gently transition everyone back toward ordinary life. But this final feast promises to surpass even the abundance and joy of the previous day's celebrations, and the preparations have taken on a sacred quality that suggests something more meaningful and lasting than simple eating and drinking. The Great Hall has been transformed once again, but tonight the decorations seem to bridge the earthly world of human celebration with something divine and eternal. Every available candle has been gathered from throughout the village and lit with ceremony, creating a warm golden glow that makes every face look beautiful and every dish seem to hold captured sunlight. The light flickers and dances, creating an atmosphere that feels both intimate and transcendent. Long tables stretch from wall to wall, but instead of the casual seating arrangements of previous meals, Each place has been carefully prepared with the finest dishes the village possesses. Families have shared their treasured plates, cups, and utensils so that everyone can eat from something beautiful tonight, regardless of their usual economic circumstances. The result is a feast setting that rivals any noble banquet while maintaining the warmth and inclusiveness that has characterized the entire celebration. The food itself represents the combined efforts of the entire community working together toward a common purpose rather than individual households preparing separate meals. Every family has contributed their best dishes, their most treasured recipes, their finest ingredients that have been saved throughout the year for exactly this moment of community celebration and Thanksgiving. The result is a feast that showcases not just abundance, but the incredible diversity of talents and traditions that make your village a unique and special place. Each dish tells a story of the hands that prepared it, the family recipes that were followed, and the love that went into creating something beautiful to share with neighbors and friends. The meal becomes a celebration of community identity expressed through the universal language of carefully prepared food. You take your assigned seat between Goodwife and Thomas the shepherd, immediately noticing that the seating arrangement has been carefully designed to mix different social classes, age groups, and family connections. The Lord sits next to the baker. Children are scattered among adults throughout the hall, and families have been separated so that everyone must interact with people they might not normally choose to sit beside during ordinary meals. The arrangement encourages conversation and connection rather than allowing people to retreat into familiar groups and comfortable relationships. By the end of the evening, everyone will have spoken with people they rarely interact with during normal village life, creating new relationships and strengthening the bonds that hold the community together through difficult times. King Peter and Queen Margaret, still wearing their festival crowns but now dressed in their finest regular clothes rather than their elaborate costumes, stand together at the front of the hall to address the gathering. Their presence commands attention and respect, but their words speak not of the comedy and chaos of the past 3 days, but of the deeper meanings that have emerged through shared celebration and community bonding. They thank everyone for participating in the ancient traditions that connect the living to countless generations who have celebrated in the same spirit of joy, gratitude, and community solidarity. Their words acknowledge that the festival serves purposes beyond entertainment, creating bonds between neighbors and renewing the social connections that help communities survive through hardships and challenges. King Peter speaks about the importance of maintaining hope and joy even during difficult times, reminding everyone that the ability to celebrate together is both a privilege and a responsibility that should never be taken for granted. Queen Margaret adds that the traditions they've shared connect them to their ancestors and will be passed down to their children, creating continuity across generations and ensuring that the wisdom of celebration will survive whatever challenges the future might bring. The first course arrives as a communal effort, with everyone helping to serve everyone else regardless of their usual roles or social positions. You find yourself ladling rich, golden soup into the bowl of Lady Elizabeth, who earlier served as your student in scullery work during the Great Reversal. The soup has been prepared from the bones of animals slaughtered specifically for the festival and simmered for hours with vegetables grown in local gardens. Each spoonful carries complex flavors that speak of careful preparation and quality ingredients. Herbs that were dried at the perfect moment, vegetables that were harvested at peak ripeness, and bones that provided rich marrow to create a broth that tastes like liquid comfort and home. The soup warms you from the inside, providing not just nourishment, but a sense of being cared for by the entire community. Wine appears on the tables in quantities that make it clear this is a truly special occasion, as most villagers never taste wine except during the most important celebrations. The deep red liquid has been mixed with honey and spices that transform it into something that tastes like liquid warmth and celebration. It's served in small portions that make each sip precious and memorable, rather than allowing anyone to drink so much that they lose awareness of the ceremony and meaning of the evening. The wine loosens tongues and warms hearts without overwhelming anyone's capacity for genuine connection and meaningful conversation. Tonight's celebration is meant to be remembered clearly rather than lost in an alcoholic haze, and the careful rationing ensures that people remain present and engaged with each other and with the significance of the final feast. The main course showcases the absolute best of the harvest that brought the community together for this celebration in the first place. Roasted meats glisten with herbs and careful preparation. Vegetables shine with butter and seasonings that enhance their natural flavors, and fresh bread still warm from the oven releases steam when broken open that carries the scent of grain transformed into sustenance. But more than the individual dishes, no matter how skillfully prepared, the meal represents the successful completion of another agricultural cycle, the community's survival through another season, and hope for the winter months ahead. The abundance on the table serves as proof that the harvest was successful, that there will be enough food to last until spring planting, and that the community can face whatever challenges winter might bring. Between courses, people stand spontaneously to share stories, songs, or simple words of gratitude that express what the festival has meant to them personally and to their families. These aren't performances or planned entertainment, but genuine expressions of what 3 days of celebration have accomplished in terms of community bonding, personal growth, and renewed appreciation for the gift of being part of something larger than individual concerns. An elderly woman thanks the community for including her in activities despite her inability to dance or participate fully in physical celebrations, expressing gratitude for being made to feel valued and important even when her contributions are limited. A young father shares appreciation for the wisdom his children have gained from participating in adult activities and being treated with respect by people who normally consider them too young for serious conversation. The village blacksmith apologizes for harsh words he spoke during the year, acknowledging that the festival has reminded him of the importance of community harmony and his responsibility to contribute to the village's well-being rather than creating unnecessary conflict. His words are received with warmth and forgiveness, demonstrating the festival's power to heal relationships and restore social bonds that may have been damaged during the stress of ordinary life. Your own moment comes unexpectedly when someone calls your name and asks you to share what you've learned during the 3 days of celebration. Standing before the assembled community, feeling the warmth of candlelight on your face and the attention of every person in the village, you find words coming from a place deeper than conscious thought, expressing truths you didn't know you understood. You speak about the discovery that joy multiplies when shared rather than diminishing like material resources, that laughter creates bonds stronger than blood relationships or economic partnerships, and that celebration is not an escape from life's difficulties, but a way of embracing life fully and finding meaning in the simple fact of being alive and connected to other human beings. Your words seem to surprise even yourself with their sincerity and insight, emerging from experiences you've had during the festival that have changed your understanding of community, happiness, and what it means to be human. The response from your neighbors suggests that your words express feelings and insights that many others have experienced, but perhaps couldn't articulate as clearly. The final course consists of sweets and treats that have been saved and hoarded throughout the entire year specifically for this moment of celebration and sharing. Honey cakes, candied fruits, nuts prepared with spices and sugar, and confections made from cream and eggs appear like treasures being distributed among faithful friends who have earned the right to share in rare luxuries. These sweets are so rare in daily life that they seem almost magical in their complexity and richness of flavor. Children's eyes grow wide with wonder as they taste honey cakes that dissolve on their tongues like solidified sunshine, and adults close their eyes in pleasure as they savor candied fruits that carry the concentrated essence of summer orchards and distant gardens. The honey used in the cakes comes from local beehives that have been carefully tended throughout the year, and the golden sweetness carries subtle flavors that reflect the different flowers the bees visited during their work. Some cakes taste of clover and wildflowers. Others hint at apple blossoms and herb gardens, creating a variety that tells the story of the entire growing season through captured sweetness. Candied fruits represent trade connections with distant lands and the village's participation in networks of commerce that extend far beyond local boundaries. Preserved oranges speak of Mediterranean groves. Candied ginger tells of spice routes that stretch across continents, and sugar-dusted figs carry stories of desert oases and merchant caravans that traveled for months to bring exotic luxuries to remote villages. Adults smile with genuine pleasure at flavors they had forgotten existed, remembering childhood celebrations and dreaming of future festivals that will bring similar moments of sweetness and joy. The rare treats create memories that will sustain people through ordinary meals of bread and porridge, reminding them that life can offer moments of extraordinary pleasure and abundance even in the midst of daily struggles. As the sweet course draws toward its close, the entire gathering joins in singing traditional songs that mark the end of harvest celebrations and the transition back toward ordinary time. The melodies are ancient, passed down through generations of voices that have sung them at countless festivals, and the words speak of gratitude for abundance, hope for survival through dark months ahead, and faith that spring will return to begin the cycle of growth and celebration again. Your voice joins with dozens of others in harmonies that seem to rise toward the candlelit ceiling like visible prayers, creating music that feels both earthly and divine. The songs acknowledge the cyclical nature of human life, the rhythm of seasons that governs agricultural communities, and the eternal return of celebration that marks successful harvests and community survival. Some voices are strong and confident, others wavering with age or emotion, but together they create a sound that encompasses the entire community's gratitude and hope. The music serves as both thanksgiving for the blessings of the past year and prayer for protection during the challenges that winter will surely bring. The evening concludes with a ceremony that acknowledges the necessary transition from festival time back to ordinary life, marking the end of 3 days that have existed outside normal social rules and expectations. King Peter and Queen Margaret formally abdicate their temporary thrones, removing their crowns with ceremony that honors the roles they've played while acknowledging that their authority was always temporary and symbolic. Father Benedict removes his jester's bells and returns to his priestly robes, transforming himself back into the spiritual authority the community will need during ordinary times when celebration gives way to the serious business of survival and salvation. His transition is marked by prayers that thank God for the joy of the past 3 days, while asking for strength and wisdom during the return to regular responsibilities. Everyone helps to clean and put away the special dishes, decorations, and ceremonial items that won't be used again until next year's celebration. The ritual of returning valuable objects to storage becomes part of the ceremony, with people handling festival items with care that acknowledges their special significance and the memories they carry. The cleaning process brings the community together one final time in cooperative work that parallels the cooperation that made the celebration possible in the first place. Working together to restore the hall to its ordinary condition creates a sense of completion and closure, that helps people transition emotionally from festival time back to everyday life. As you help stack plates and fold tablecloths, running your hands over fabric that still carries the sense of celebration and the memory of shared meals, you realize that the festival has accomplished its ancient purpose with remarkable success. For 3 days, your community has celebrated its survival, strengthened the bonds between neighbors, and created memories that will sustain everyone through the difficult months ahead. The joy and connection experienced during these days won't disappear when normal life resumes, but will remain as a resource that people can draw upon during times of hardship, conflict, or discouragement. The festival has proven that extraordinary happiness is always possible when people choose to create it together, and that knowledge will influence how the community faces whatever challenges the future might bring. The candles are extinguished one by one, and people begin to drift toward their homes. But the conversations continue in doorways and on paths as neighbors prove reluctant to let the magic end completely. The transition is gradual rather than abrupt, allowing people to carry some of the festival atmosphere with them as they return to their ordinary lives and responsibilities. Tomorrow will bring the return of regular work, familiar concerns, and daily routines that have been suspended during the celebration. But tonight has proven that community celebration can transform individuals and strengthen social bonds in ways that last far beyond the duration of the festival itself. The knowledge that such joy is possible, that neighbors can become family through shared laughter and mutual support, will change how people relate to each other even after the costumes are put away and the normal social order is restored. As you walk home through streets that still smell faintly of torch smoke and roasted meat, carrying within yourself the warmth of shared celebration and community connection, you understand that the festival's most important gifts aren't the food, drink, and entertainment, but the renewed appreciation for human relationships and the strengthened bonds that will help the community survive whatever hardships winter might bring. The Harvest Festival of 1347 ended as all great celebrations must, with tired bodies, full hearts, and memories that would warm the community through the cold months ahead like banked coals that continue glowing long after the fire has died down. But the 3 days of chaos, laughter, and connection had accomplished something that went far beyond mere entertainment or temporary escape from life's difficulties. They had reminded everyone that joy is not a luxury to be enjoyed only when all practical needs are met, but a necessity as vital as food and shelter for human survival and community health. The festival had demonstrated that celebration creates bonds between people that are stronger and more lasting than connections based purely on economic necessity or geographic proximity. In the weeks that followed the festival's end, as autumn gave way to winter and the community settled into the rhythm of shorter days and longer nights, the villagers would return to their regular routines of work and worry. But something fundamental had changed in the rhythm of their daily lives and their relationships with each other. The baker would remember the day he wore a crown of turnip leaves and served as temporary nobility, making decisions that affected the entire community and being treated with respect normally reserved for people of higher birth. That memory would influence how he saw himself and his place in the village hierarchy, giving him confidence to speak up during community discussions and contribute ideas that might never have been shared without the festival's demonstration that wisdom can emerge from unexpected sources. The Lord would recall learning to scrub pots alongside his former scullery maid, discovering through direct experience the skill and effort required to maintain the comfortable life he had always taken for granted. His participation in humble work would change how he treated his servants and understood his responsibilities as someone whose comfort depends entirely on other people's labor and dedication. Children would carry the memory of being taken seriously by adults who listened to their ideas with genuine respect and implemented their suggestions for solving community problems. That experience of being valued and heard would shape their development into adults who contribute actively to community life rather than waiting passively for others to make all important decisions. The medieval understanding of celebration as essential to human survival seems foreign to our modern world, where festivals often become commercialized events focused on consumption rather than connection, and where entertainment is something purchased from professional providers rather than created through community participation. But those 3 days in 1347 demonstrate something profound about human needs that transcend historical periods and cultural differences. The harvest festival created space for joy that was simultaneously individual and communal, sacred and profane, silly and meaningful. In a world where survival was always uncertain and death was always near, the ability to laugh, dance, and celebrate together was not escapism, but the highest form of courage and the most practical form of community building. It was humanity's declaration that life, however difficult and uncertain, was worth living fully and joyfully whenever circumstances permitted such celebration. The festival served as proof that people could create happiness through cooperation and mutual support, that communities could survive hardship by maintaining connections stronger than mere economic arrangements. Perhaps most remarkably, the festival demonstrated that celebration could serve spiritual purposes without requiring formal religious structure or official theological approval. The joy shared during those 3 days created its own form of sacred experience, connecting people to each other and to something larger than individual concerns in ways that sustain them through daily difficulties. The Pilgrimage of Fools, with its parody of religious ceremony, somehow managed to create genuine spiritual communion through laughter and absurdity. The Mock Court, by inverting normal authority structures, revealed hidden wisdom and alternative forms of leadership that enriched the community's understanding of governance and social organization. The night markets, whether their magic was real or imagined, opened people's minds to possibilities beyond the constraints of ordinary life and encouraged them to believe in transformation, hope, and the power of human imagination to create beauty from simple materials and common experiences. The Great Reversal, by forcing people to experience life from different social positions, created empathy and understanding that broke down barriers between classes and generated lasting changes in how people treated each other during ordinary times when temporary equality gave way to traditional hierarchies. The Chaos Games celebrated human creativity, resilience, and the ability to find joy in absurdity, teaching people that competition could build community rather than dividing it when the focus shifted from winning and losing to shared participation and collective entertainment. As winter deepened and the harvest stores gradually diminished, as sickness and hardship tested the community's resilience and solidarity, the memories of those 3 extraordinary days would serve as reminders that joy was always possible when people chose to create it together. The festival had proven that celebration was not dependent on external circumstances, but on collective will and community commitment to happiness as a shared responsibility and common goal. The torches burned out, the costumes were carefully stored away for next year's celebration, and the village returned to its normal appearance. But the memory of those 3 days would live on in stories told by firesides, in traditions passed to children, and in the fundamental knowledge that human communities could transform themselves into something magical and wonderful through the simple decision to celebrate life rather than merely enduring it. The Harvest Festival of 1347 stands as testimony to the human capacity for joy, the power of community celebration to create lasting bonds, and the eternal truth that people can choose happiness even in the midst of uncertainty and hardship. Those lessons remain as relevant today as they were 7 centuries ago, offering hope and practical wisdom for anyone seeking to build stronger communities and find deeper meaning in the shared experience of being human. King Peter, who normally has no voice in village decisions and whose opinions are rarely sought on any matter of importance, now commands everyone's attention and respect through humor and imagination rather than inherited status or accumulated wealth. His temporary reign demonstrates that leadership can emerge from unexpected places when communities create opportunities for hidden talents to flourish.